We have a panel now, and we have time for debate, and we have had illustrated, I think, some of the points also in Guy Standing's first intervention. We have the basic principles, we have the compromises which has to be made, but we also have the problem that, as Guy Standing was saying, that there may be a risk that if experiments deviate too much from the basic idea, then it could also compromise the basic income ideas. So we have about 20 minutes for questions to the panel. There should be a mic somewhere coming. And I try to be as brief and precise as possible. You had a question here, yeah? Each participant present themselves briefly. Name?
I'm a Christian, and I have a dream which is international. And I would like the panel to consider it if this dream could be a dream that you would like to join sometime. We have this 2030 goals, which the top two is to quit poverty and to make hunger zero. And maybe this dream could cope with that. The dream is that the United Nations and the World Bank creates 7.4 billion world citizen accounts instantly receiving $1 a day. This is not taking place instead of these national experiments, of course, but I think that it could be interesting also to have this dream in mind on a parallel basis. Thank you.
Fine. Thank you, Justin. And you had we have 2 or 3 before we have the panel. You.
My name is Frans Frydendal, and I have a question to Guy Standing. You mentioned that the basic income scheme needs to be connected with a voice. The question is, what can you say about the kind of organization that is needed for that?
Tell me if you are not able to hear the questions, and we'll try to do something.
My name is Ali Mutlu Köylüoğlu from Istanbul, Turkey. My question is whether basic income is something experimentable or not. Because in fact, it's kind of a fight against the existing status of the economic system. So you cannot experiment such cases, in my mind, because it has long-term complications, long-term effects. My questions to Guy, maybe he took the point, but let me repeat once again. Whether basic income is experimentable or not, I mean, this concept is something experimental or not, considering that it's something not in small scale, it's something very huge. I mean, it's like a Second World War. I mean, it's like a war against existing system. That's why I would like to hear his comments. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, brief questions. Not that easy to answer, I could imagine. Who would like to start in the panel?
I think there's definitely, that's nice. There's definitely many problems with experimenting with basic income, and one is the one you mentioned, even though, so that's one of the reasons why you have to be so very clear about what you're testing, what your hypotheses are in this sense. Experiments cannot be the whole thing. This is also something Professor Standing just said, that there's other reasons that might already be there, that you might already know about, why you might be in favor or against basic income. There's principles you might have, etc. So experiments aren't everything in this sense, but they do enhance, at least provide a way of putting forward a discussion. If we always just keep talking about whether you are in favor or against basic income, nothing seems to at least ever happen. These experiments are one way in which this discussion is put forward in a very strong sense, and one way to ask the questions you're also talking about the larger economic system. So it's not only about the results even of the experiments, it's also about that these experiments provide the kind of forum for a discussion about the larger system we're in. I think that's very important to note as well.
Okay, thank you. Guy? Oh, Olli?
Let's give a typical question about the global issue to Guy. I also take that small last question. For example, when it comes to that experiment in Finland, there were lots of skepticism against the experiment among those political parties and organizations that are in favor of basic income, because they thought that, okay, the experiment will show that this idea will not work. And I think that they had some kind of Albert Einstein idea. Albert Einstein said that many experiments can't prove that I had right, but one single experiment can show that I had wrong. And I think that that's a fear among many of those proponents of basic income in Finland when they are saying that we shouldn't experiment at all. And the other possibility towards basic income is to take gradual steps towards basic income, like unifying basic benefits. For example, in Finland we have lots of basic benefits. There are different kind of basic benefits for the unemployed, sick, rehabilitation, etc., etc. And also in the beginning of 2017, social insurance institution will be running, in addition to those basic things, also social assistance. And I am pretty sure that in a couple of years' time, a discussion will begin to unify all those things, and then we have a kind of term or small-scale basic income that's paid out by the social insurance institution.
I'm going to stand up so I can see people at the back. I think on your first point, I might dream big, but I prefer to talk small. I think we're going to make more progress if we just focus on the local and our communities and our towns and our cities and worry about the wider dreams till tomorrow, you know. But if you give me a good bottle of wine, maybe I'll change my mind. Now, the second point, very good question. We in the Indian pilot, we used the Self-Employed Women's Association. And the SEWA provided advice to people, men and women, in the community. And I think it's important that this voice organization should be non-political, it should be advisory, and it should be at the disposal of people to consult. And we can imagine such organizations. We need those organizations. So to me, it's very important. Now, in answer to the third question, I think it's very important that the pilots be judged as being whether or not they are inconsistent with a full basic income. Okay? Now, Olli has given some answers and you've given some answers. I believe that there are certain features in the Dutch schemes that I've seen, particularly the one for Utrecht, which I think, I may be wrong, but I think are inconsistent with moving, okay? Whether the Finnish one is just the unemployed, my feel is that it is in some respects inadvertently inconsistent with moving because it is introducing a distortion in the labour market, but we can discuss that. So the key question is it consistent? Now the real answer is that in fact, ironically, when we started Bien, we thought it was only relevant for rich countries. But ironically, it's actually easier to introduce it on a full basic income with the principles I outlined in my talk in a developing country. In our Indian pilots, all of the definitions that I mentioned were respected. Okay? All of those were respected. And we introduced it so that everybody in the community got it, unconditionally, individually, and everything. And to go back to the Einstein point, there were many things that came out that, to be honest, we had not anticipated. We weren't proving we're right or wrong. And one of them was this, that it turned out that the emancipatory value of a basic income, even a small amount in developing country context, the emancipatory value is greater than the monetary value. We had not anticipated that. Now, I've explained it in the book and in articles elsewhere, but that is fundamentally important because it tells you that the real value is greater than the money value. So that is, I think, quite an important new finding.
Thank you, all three in the panel. We have time for more questions. There's one in the back. There are two in the back there.
One thing I haven't heard so much of is something I've been reading about how to implement
Take the mic closer to the
basic income. Shouldn't it be more like a people's movement, that is, you come from the bottom and as a demand for social justice or to lay down poverty, that instead of implement it from the, otherwise, isn't it going to just be a political feature between political parties?
So you're asking top down or down top? Behind you, there was a lady, a woman. Yeah. Sorry. All the long hair. Sorry.
Yeah, don't be sorry. It's okay. It's happened before. So the question I would like to raise is, there's a concern about people not working in a scheme of basic income. And it's not that I don't trust, but I think that the basic income idea depends on people not being lazy. I'm not saying that all people are lazy, not at all. But there are jobs, I think, being taken care of out of the need to work, to get paid, to have food to eat and a place to live, that in a sense are boring or not exciting to do. There's an idea in the basic income scheme that you should be able to take jobs that you would like to do, not out of need for money. So my question is, how do we cope with people not taking these jobs out of necessity? Does the BI idea relate on automation of work, doing these boring but still necessary jobs?
Okay, thank you. And here, yeah.
Good morning, Philip from Belgium. Maybe a question for Guy. What prevents BIEN from laying out a journey of experiments or pilots which avoid the inconsistency that you mentioned and also the risk that it waters down the whole OBI journey? So what prevents BIEN from doing that? To agree that journey of pilots across the countries? Because now it's like chaos, which is fine to a certain level, but when you want to step up and accelerate the journey, I think you need to orchestrate a little bit more. So what prevents BIEN from doing that? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. We go back to the panel. Who would like to? There was some for you, Guy. Oh, right?
Let's begin with a small anecdote that I think is very proper in this house. You guys said that in the case that you will get a good bottle of wine, you will change your mind. Maybe, okay. And to Danish colleagues, you perhaps know the story. In Denmark, you had the Prime Minister Jens Otto Krag, a social democrat, and before the election, or in the election rally, he said that never ever I will be in the same cabinet or government with communists. And it appeared to be so that in the evening when the elections were over, he was compelled to form a cabinet with the communists. And then a journalist asked that Prime Minister Krag, have you changed your mind? No, absolutely not. I'm just thinking differently. So that perhaps after having a bottle of good wine, you are thinking differently. So, and then when it comes to the BN idea or having a kind of advices how to experiment, perhaps it's a good idea, but it's also good to keep in mind that every country is different. And for example, implementing basic income experiment and having experiment in India is a totally different thing as having an experiment in Finland, where we have a very complicated system of social security, and implementing a very simple device like basic income in a complex legal system. It's very, very demanding. I can say, I could speak hours and hours about those legal problems that we had when we were writing legislation just for one group of people. And you can imagine what had happened in the case that we had the total population of Finland and had to write legislation or experiment for that group of people. And okay, then if we need a grassroots movement, of course we need, but we also need political parties. Switzerland is a very good example where nothing happened because the political parties were against mostly the basic income, and it was from the original people or grassroots people who were initiating the referendum on the basic income. So that we need both, so that the pressure from down and then political elites that are making decisions and political elites that are in favor. And in that sense, I think that the Dutch case is interesting because all your parties are in favor of the experiment, whereas in Finland, most parties are against, so that the minority of parties are in favor, and therefore there are lots of that kind of political tensions that made our work very difficult.
Thank you. Yeah, let me also tackle the first two questions, basically. The grassroots part, indeed, we've had this in a sense in the Netherlands. We've had many like small town discussions. I've been to, I think, more than 30 of those and talked there about this. And this is how most of the municipal experiments actually started. So they started by just a couple of people saying, we want this, and then some local politicians taking this up. And of course, that should be, I guess, how democracy works or can work. So there's some good things there. Unfortunately, we've also seen the limits of it on a national level. So even though locally many people are doing this, and if you have a poll, we had a poll recently in the Netherlands, many people at least are already almost in favor of basic income. And I'm sure if you do a poll that most people will be in favor of experimenting. This takes some time before this reaches Parliament, so Parliament's a bit slower, which also obviously has its advantages. You don't want mass hysteria to change the world, so this is also one of the reasons why our current democracy, I guess, functions that way. So we need both, and I hope we can combine both in a good way, so also in the future. Okay, then to the second question. This is also always a question I very much like to answer, because I think there's many answers you can give to it. With regards to, I think, too often, first of all, the question is indeed kind of generalized to, are people lazy or not, right? I think this is not, of course, the question we should answer. It depends on so many things what people do. It depends on your current situation, your history, your personal social circumstances, your cultural background, whatever. This all determines what your motivations, your aspirations, just what you do is. And it will never be that everyone does the same thing in a country. So it's more of a question of what will happen in this specific case and in that specific case. But more specifically on your second question, what will happen to all those people that are in a job they don't like, for example, and then get this basic security? Well, there's also a very kind of positive argument to be made there, in the sense that maybe these jobs, it's not that basic income means that everyone's going to do a job they like very much. There's many things that maybe we also do on a daily basis that we don't like very much. Not everyone likes doing the laundry, or not everybody likes doing just washing or cleaning the house or whatever. But people will still get paid for those, and there's still money still plays a role, obviously. So it's not that with a basic income there's no payment anymore. It's actually that maybe those jobs will be paid more if they are in fact important for society. So this is actually kind of recalibrating the labor market, in the sense that motivation and just what you kind of sacrifice for doing your job are taken more into account, instead of just there being you have to work anyway, so we'll take any salary there is or any conditions, labor conditions there are. So this might actually provide an opportunity to kind of recalibrate the labor market in the sense that it's more functional and maybe to some people more just as well, because people are now paid for actually what they contribute and how needed that is. So that's I think a very interesting thought experiment already, and maybe something we'll see in the long term. Unfortunately, we can't see this in the small experiments. We'll need to see this when a basic income is implemented, because it's a macroeconomic kind of thing. But it's definitely worth thinking about.
Let me just concentrate on a couple of the points, but the first one that you raised about work. It's absolutely fundamental for our cause that we have to reconceptualize what we mean by work. And we have to mock the conventional statistics, which basically says that only jobs and labor count as work, and all other forms of work, including the same activities that if they're done in a job but not in a job, are not regarded as work. None of the pilots that I have seen examined have shown that a basic income leads to people stopping working. I repeat, none of them, okay? Despite the claims made and the statistical fancy work by American and other economists, all they've shown is that some changes, perhaps, and Carl has done a fantastic paper on this, some marginal changes may be statistically insignificant in the amount of labor people do. But it's fundamentally important for our cause to demand that all the forms of work that women do, all the forms of work that many of us want to do, including laundering and cleaning and things, which can be very therapeutic. Please, try it.
No, I know. I like it, actually.
Including many of these forms, are work and essential. So I think that, and that leads to a point. When you're doing a pilot, make sure the design of the questionnaires are such that you capture various forms of work. In our Indian pilots, there was a marginal change if you ask about main activity. If you ask about what's your main activity, people might say doing a job, working as a laborer, okay? If you stop at that point, you don't ask about people's secondary activities, then you could see a slight change, a decline among some people. But the reason was they had shifted and were doing another form of economic work or some other forms of work in and around the household. So if you combine the data on the different forms of work, we've shown, as we've shown in our book, there was a substantial increase in the amount of work as a result of the basic income. I mean, let's get real, people, and demand that our labor statistics be reformed. So I think that's a very good point. Then I like your point about orchestrating it. Come and join and try and develop a technique. Carl and Louise and others we need a strategy that makes the positives of pilots work for the wider movement. I agree with that. But I don't want to end with knocking my friend Ollie. Nowhere is it simple to do a basic income, okay? Pilot. I remember in India, our offices were attacked by a mob throwing big bricks through the window. We all had to hide under the tables because they thought that we were a plot to abolish all the welfare systems. I remember we were infiltrated by provocateurs sent by a very, very famous Belgian professor of social policy who paid these people to go to the villages, and basically they were telling villagers that our plot was really to take away their land. Okay? And we had difficulty convincing them that we had no such intention. I remember going to a place with the untouchables, the lowest caste people. And we got into very big difficulties with the upper castes and the politicians because I was spending the day with untouchables. you know? So there are problems everywhere, I tell you. But it's worth it because I remember going to that village 6 months later, and all the children of the untouchables were in the school. Why were they in school? Because their families had used the basic income to buy them plates and knives and forks so that they could go to school and have lunch in the school. And you see little effects like that and you get emotional. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So we'll not solve whether the Finnish or the Indian system are the most complex. That will remain an unsolved question. In my program it says coffee break now. So we'll have a break for about 20 minutes, starting again at around 11 o'clock here. Coffee should be just outside, I hope.